Hi, welcome to Farmers Bridge webinar, Shifting from Family to Business Communications. I'm Maggie Van Camp. I'm co-founder of Loft 32 and Farmers Bridge, and I also farm near Blackstock, Ontario. We are here today to talk about and draw some attention to 6 habits that are worth changing and provide some easy to implement, results oriented tools and words that you can use on your own family businesses. Really, when family businesses expand or go through intergenerational change, business communication, is needed, right? But how come it's so difficult? I'm here with Patti Durand. She is a family enterprise advisor and a coach from Humboldt, Saskatchewan. She is just an absolutely positive, strategic thinking person, and she has helped hundreds of families navigate through transitional change. So thank you, Patti, for joining us.
Happy to be here. It's a topic I care a lot about, and so love to delve into.
Great. Well, we've identified five old habits, kind of things that need to be changed. And we're going to voice an example of that. And we're also going to talk about sort of five highly effective ways you can move ahead and change the way you communicate within your family business. So let's start. The old habit I'm thinking of right off the top of the head is avoidance, not responding, Patti, and giving really evasive answers or just silent treatment. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah, and it sounds like that's none of your business.
Mm,
I'll tell you when I'm ready. When we respond that way, when we evade questions, this is incredibly common with the successor talking to the current leader and saying, "Hey, like when are you going to give me the update?" The word that it is used to describe is kind of a lingo today in today's language is stonewalling.
mm.
And stonewalling, we are most familiar with it in the public as why we love to hate politicians' responses. So a reporter asks a politician a question, and the politician either talks and talks and talks without actually answering the question, or even worse, says no comment. We love to hate that. We're like, you got to do better. But then we fail to see, oh, wait a minute, we're actually doing that ourselves. So, sound familiar?
Yeah, I've interviewed a few politicians that did that, and I hated it.
But I'm thinking about like we're not talking from a place of perfection because we can be guilty of it as well.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, if you're getting asked a question and you are not answering it specifically, either you're like authoritating saying none of your business, or you're like skirting it or avoiding it, first thing is just notice it. Say, oh man, I'm not giving a straight answer. Number two, it's the challenge is to stay in the discomfort and say, you
Yeah.
know what? I actually don't know the answer, or I'm working on it, or I know you deserve a response, but you got to give me some time. Working through that and owning the fact that this is something you need to kind of do together, and it's uncomfortable is a really big shift from just shutting down good conversation and curiosity.
Wow, that's powerful. What about informing the family, extended the family? How should you go about doing that?
Yeah, you know what? This is a little bit complicated, I would say, and it's on a per family basis. But a general good rule of thumb is that trying to keep clarity and people informed, but really starting with the family members that are actively working in the business and the operations. Because if they're committing their career to this impacts them in the long term. And so having some significant conversations over time of what they expect, what you expect, what each of you need can really go a long way before you open up the floor to what everybody's opinion is, whether they're involved in the business or not. So big topic, but those are some general rules of thumb.
Yeah, we're covering a really broad topic, and the information around these topics is huge and growing. We're learning so much more about organizational psychology and communication.
Totally.
So just understand, we're trying to give you some little tidbits here.
For
Um,
sure. I
yeah.
will say on that note, actually, that the things we're specifying today are ones we know that you can identify and work on immediately. So they're very tangible and something that you yourself can do. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass the baton to Maggie and tell me a little bit about shame, blame, and assumptions.
I think the quote you gave me was, "If you talk to your business partners like you talk to your family, you wouldn't be in business." That's probably very, very true. It looks like you broke the manure spreader again. Stop being so rammy, or being assumptive about somebody can't drive the tractor or the combine because they're from town, not from the farm. Or how about this one? My younger brother, he's always been the wild one. You can't trust him. These are assumptions that people go into their family businesses with, that you got to stop that because you're going from today onward only. And it's a good practice here to just focus on the problem and not the people. So stop using judgy words and stop and check your reaction. So just kind of stop and say, did I sound like Red Foreman from that 70s show? Or, where did I come from? That you're trying to help the people here. You're on the same team. And that's
Hmm.
so important, to not start building walls around judgment and blame and pulling up old stories. Nobody cares if that person had a party when they were 14. Just move on. It's not
Right.
helping. Generally, everyone is trying to do the best that they can, Patty. And I know you and I see this all the time in family businesses, and particularly on farms. We're just so proud to work in this industry where people are passionate about what they do and they love the work that they do, and they're trying their very best. So start with curiosity and not judgment. I know it sounds cliche, but let's figure this out together. Or how can we help? How can I help you? Are you okay? Start with those kind of softer approaches instead of, I want to say the red foreman, have bad luck. The reason that bad things happen to you or is that you're a dumbass. Don't say that. That's a bad idea. Don't go to red. Don't pull out your inner red foreman. And it goes both ways. It's so interesting because the younger generation can be really judgmental of the older generation too. So give each other a ton of grace and start with maybe some softer words, like we can solve this together.
And help me understand.
Mm,
Tell me more.
yes.
Most people get out of bed with great intentions in the morning. No, I would say that Maggie did not intend to break the manure spreader again. That's your
Yes.
story, right? So,
Yes, it is.
and when you already feel bad, someone giving you that on top of it, ooh, like we can do better, kids.
Yeah, don't dismiss and put people down. That would be, I think that happens a lot actually to farm women, an amazing amount of time. I hate to say that, but I've heard a lot in my life, those dismissals and sort of put downs. But I think there's actual solutions in there. If you look at for and instead of or, that's what I
Yeah,
always go to. Try to use and, even if, instead of being critical. Try to think about the and. There might be something in there. There's probably some wisdom and ideas that you should look at. It's an opportunity to teach, Patty. Like, I look
right.
at that as any kind of mistakes are quickly turned into lessons without being patronizing. That's the trick. My friend Len Davies, I don't want to go on
Mm,
too long, but Len shared something really kind of bright with me, and that parents see their comments as suggestions and successors see them as interfering, or sometimes even criticism. And I'm
mm,
like, oh,
mm.
that's really powerful. So check in with yourself when you answer to something, like before you jump on an answer, go, how does this feel? Why am I answering or thinking like this? So
Yeah,
just stop and sort of place it out there that everybody's trying to do better.
well said.
Mm. So, an old habit that happens often, more often than it should actually, is to vent to anyone who will listen. And especially about the person you're frustrated with. So, Patty, I know you've heard this. What does it sound like for farm families?
Well, you know what? You come in from the field, ah, dad did it again. Or dad comes in and is talking to one of his buddies at the coffee shop. Man, my kids will never learn. They'll only ever be employees. This practice is incredibly human. When you are frustrated, the ability to talk it through, to get it off of your chest, to share it with a trusted person is totally reasonable and normal. However, if you fail, if you do that step, but then fail to go back to the person who actually is having this impact in the first place, to actually give them an opportunity to adjust, respond, or clarify actually what's happening, that's on you. So for me, if I say, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated right now, but I fail to go to the person that I'm actually frustrated with, I am not actually part of the solution. I'm part of the problem because I'm perpetuating it.
Yeah.
So it's the same idea, right? In terms of gossip, right? When you're repeating something at nauseum, but not actually going back and seeing about what we can do to fix it and saying it. This is a tricky one, I will say, because if you, like many people I've spoken to, say, oh, I avoid conflict, if you view that as conflict and you are genuinely afraid of it, which
Mhm.
like makes you feel nauseous, for example, this might be something you need help with.
Yeah. You should
So
be able to
sometimes
talk.
that's, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, talking to the source is so important to get the right information. Just you
Oh,
would never,
gosh,
Patty, I would never go to you for chicken farming advice. I mean,
please don't.
that's a lot. But I know I need to go to my feed salesman. Like I just know. So you do that on a regular basis. So talking to the source around family communication can, oh man, it can open up and do the right thing.
So if you had a particular issue with feed salesman, and you're
Mhm.
really feeling challenged and really were concerned about impacting the relationship, that could be an example where going off and talking to someone, talking it through, getting your words in order and your thoughts about how you want to say it,
Mhm.
sometimes even writing out a script, like you can do these things because it is stressful. It's an incredibly human response to want to avoid it. So then set yourself up for success. Or if it's even deeper, family challenges, long term habits, those types of things that are negative, a coach or a facilitator, a mediator, third party to come in who's experienced in those situations can make things incredibly safe and much easier. So there are ways to get there, but start with yourself. Are you talking to the source? And if you're not, own it.
Very powerful, very powerful. Even just remembering to talk to everyone, it's around certain topics. Like when you're having a conversation all the time with your successor, it's pretty easy to slip
Mhm.
in Easter dinner plans. But you got to remember those kind of plans are for the whole family, not just that individual. So make sure that you communicate thoughtfully about
Well, and
not just
the
go
flip
to.
side, the
Mm.
flip side of that, sorry to interrupt, the flip side is talking to the successor about the farm succession over and over and over again, but failing to inform the rest of the family.
Oh, yeah.
So in your absence, only they are the keeper of the knowledge. So this is a perfect segue because you're going to be talking now about random conversations about important issues and how to maybe shift that old habit.
Oh, it happens all the time. You know that Thanksgiving dinner when the sister-in-law is sitting there beside mom and she says, "Oh, so you're giving Bobby the whole farm, I hear." There's a bomb for Thanksgiving dinner. But that's because they haven't been informed. They don't know what's going on. There's no transparency. I think it's Brené Brown that says that clarity is a gift, I believe that she
Mm,
says. And I'm like, that is so powerful. So
right.
powerful to have some clarity with everyone. Now, understanding who has a voice and who has a vote is super important too. So, and I think the whole family needs to understand that as you go through any changes and with the business itself. So, setting up a good habit where there's a safe, consistent place to discuss and decide important issues. It sounds pretty straightforward, and it can be if you start making it a habit. So start doing that. If you're just starting on that pathway of doing it, the everyday huddle about operations is a great place to start. But I want you to think very clearly about something Patty and I call the 5 whys. So before you start going down that path, I want you to think clearly about why you're having a meeting, who's going to be there, where it's going to be. So someplace with no distractions, and everybody's got to turn off their cell phones for sure. It's got to be convenient for everybody, and it's got to be a place where everyone feels comfortable. I want you to think about when. There's another W. How often, how frequent those meetings are going to be, because there's a lot of trust that builds knowing that there is going to be another meeting in a couple of weeks or in 3 weeks, or anybody can access that. Understand very clearly who is that going to be at the meeting and who has authority at those meetings, and what topics you're going to cover. So understand, at certain types of meetings and with certain people there, There's certain topics to cover.
So I'm just going to build in a couple of things that I think are really key that I love. So the frequency,
Mm.
um, I've certainly met with families where they did have a coordinated, facilitated, had a third party do a family meeting with them once. And so that for the people, for the leaders of the farm, that felt like something they've been working towards for a long time, and they got to finally check the box as though it was complete. The reality of families is that things change. People's desires, people's education, people's careers, people die, people are born, people are married into the family, people divorce from the family. All of these ongoing dynamics and changes mean that one meeting where you have to speak on the spot and forever hold your peace is not enough.
Mm,
And so it's not about um, doing it once, it's the practice.
mm,
And so
I love
some
that.
daily huddles, love it.
Mhm.
Um, there's different decisions, capital investments, projects, financial reviews are maybe monthly, quarterly, and then some more strategy and long term planning could be annually, something of that nature. It's custom for your family. You know your family best, but recognize that continuing to come back to the table becomes a really important, safe, consistent place to speak.
Yeah, this is not a boardroom. You have to make it
Mhm.
for your own family. That's very important. And one of the things you can do right away is set up a code of conduct. At your first family meeting really can help you
Give
navigate
some
how everyone's
examples on
going to
that.
behave. Oh, code of conducts are wonderful. So, one thing we did with my family, for example, we decided we were going to have an annual meeting for our family. We talked about what we were going to talk about at those meetings, and we understood very clearly that although everyone had a voice, when we first started them, I had authority. So I was the leader of the family. So we set that up. We did, if you don't be late was one of the things that one of my you get to set it up for your own family. No yelling, no swearing, all those things are so important to be clear up front so everyone feels safe, Patty.
Yeah. Another one that I really got a kick out of that came up at a women's conference I was at is no booze and no booze, meaning no booze, as in don't be negative, generally be helpful and encouraging and positive, be realistic, but not pushing everybody else down, and no booze. Drinking is generally not helpful. And I thought that is so clever. So,
We should have made that one part of our family meeting. We also actually celebrate after our family meeting. We go out for lunch together.
mm,
And I think there's something powerful in remembering that this can be a really positive thing for your family. So don't necessarily grimace your way through this. It's really helpful. And on that note, then the fifth habit that we're going to talk about today is fear of conflict and viewing conflict as a threat, Patty.
So, as I've alluded to before, this is kind of normal. Um, we view conflict, we view disagreement as a risk, as a negative, as a personal insult. And I would say in our world today, in our greater culture, there's such polarity. And politically in particular, it says if you're not with me, you're against me. And
Mm.
so people that actually have a whole bunch in common that would have beautiful synergies together avoid each other like the plague, literally live in different neighborhoods. So let's set that aside and think about on a family business. You said earlier, well, you're on the same team. How would we approach it if we valued our differences of opinion? Because in fact, that's where creative solutions come from. That's where opportunities come from. Sometimes by digging in, you'll also realize, oh my gosh, we're arguing the same point with different words. So when you feel as though there is a difference of opinion, I say this, you say this, the opportunity then is to say to the other person, help me understand. I feel differently than you, but I'm interested in why you feel the way you do. And by going down that path, excuse me, by going down that path, it's new learning, it's growth together, it's pulling in the same direction. And so if you consistently view difference of opinion as a negative, the opportunity is to turn it around and say, this is a positive thing. This is a good thing. This is a fruitful thing. How will we choose to embrace it? And
Mhm.
that's where the magic happens.
Our mutual friend Jess Campbell, she said that conflict is a noun and
Mm,
fighting is a verb. So can you talk can you expand on that and what that means
absolutely.
really?
So I will say that there is kind of a belief or a practice where people view conflict as attack. That it's viewed as negatively. It's viewed as a risk. It's viewed as it's a trigger to fight. And that's one of the possible responses to a conflict, the noun conflict. Another response is curiosity. Another response is asking for a timeout and saying, I see this really differently. I need some time to reflect.
Mm,
Um, it also goes back to the code of conduct in meetings. We're going to respectfully hear each other. We're going to listen with curiosity and ask for better details and clarity. And if the person can't offer it, we're going to give them some time. So this is sounds like it's kind of coddling and being and slowing down the process, but in fact, it's equipping future leaders.
mm.
It's educating and learning and growing together. And
So
so conflict will happen. Number one, it's a given. How are you going to choose to respond to it? And I'm offering an alternative.
that's awesome, Patty. Now, do different people respond to conflict differently? Is that what you're saying?
You think?
Yeah, I do. I've seen
Yeah,
it.
yeah, absolutely. I think that knowing how you respond to conflict is
Mm,
really the only thing you have control over. So if you recognize saying, you know what, when you attack me, and you can say this, in a calmer situation kind of after the fact, but when you attack me or when you're aggressive, I will close up. So that's the freeze response. Um, or I will remove myself, the flight response.
right.
You tend to have the fight response, speaking to the other person. You tend to do this. So how might we deal with this? When you respond that way, so I will say that I've done that with people. I've said, listen, when you respond that way, I feel afraid, concerned, and I'm going to retreat. So can we figure out a better way to solve this problem? And sometimes that also needs some third party help. Um, but only you can only control your response and be clear about what you need and and own that to grow around it.
I heard a really interesting study. I read it recently that said when you put a third person in the room of two conflicting people, they act better. They
Mm.
just simply act better because there's a third person. They have to behave a bit better. Subconsciously, we're better when there's a third, non-biased person.
Another trick I know of, two business partners that they will have intense, important discussions in public places to
Oh,
prevent them from losing it. So they will intentionally go to like a local restaurant, and not that everybody can hear them per se, but they will maintain decorum and hold themselves accountable as a result. And so there are different tricks to
mm,
recognize that, work around some of your old habits.
right, right. The parking lot solution is another one where if the topic's just too heated, take a break, right? And Patty, I think you've talked about this before. You need 20 minutes at least to cool down. How does that work?
Yeah, yeah. You know what, actually, and we've kind of tossed around the possibility. So when you recognize, ooh, this is going in a negative way, and neither of us are functioning real well, or this is vulnerable, to say, hey, we're on thin ice. Let's take a break. And so to actually calm down your system in terms of the fight, flight, or freeze response, that kind of that sense of, ah, 20 minutes minimum, 24 hours is pretty nice. We don't always have that luxury, but
Mhm.
do yourself a favor, and like there is not a productive outcome from a fight. It's not possible. It's incredibly destructive and very high risk, and there's a better way.
Really good advice. I hope everyone who's in a conflicted situation took notes on what you said, Patty. They're really powerful, powerful ideas. So I'm just going to summarize our five. There are, of course, probably 25 different
Hmm.
habits
This
that
is
all
this
of
is
you can
dipping a
try.
toe.
This is dipping our toe, exactly. But the five highly effective communication habits are one, being open and transparent with your business partners. You are on the same team. I think we've said that 6 times. It's so important. You're on the same team, and this is your family. If you're not going to trust them, who are you going to trust? Two is attack the problem, not the person. So stop making it about assumptions, past habits, blaming. move ahead toward the problem and move forward with it. Third is talk to the source. And I loved how you explained this today. It was just really clear that so much meetings after the meetings are not useful. So talk to the source if you have a problem. Four is a safe, consistent place to discuss and decide important issues. And we talked about meetings and how to do that. And five is treat conflict as an opportunity, not as something to avoid. So treat it as an opportunity. So the first three are interesting because they're about self, and the last two are more about the group and how you can help your team approach. So in the end, I guess we only can control how we react, isn't that right, Patty? And not necessarily how others.
Absolutely. But when we control how we react, we're also setting an example. And that's something that I think about is that in our conversations, we're not just wanting to provide hope and inspiration, but also good modeling of going back and forth, of balance and communication. And I personally am really excited. I know this industry really, really well, and I know that these are capable, caring people in family farm businesses. And I think of a time in the future when family farm businesses are looked to as an example of communication excellence. We got some work to do, but I have no doubt they are capable.
And it gets easier as you go along. The more you do, it's one of those muscle things. The more you build it, the easier it
Yeah.
gets. So
It's
don't
not
give
a
up, keep
superpower.
trying. It's not, yes, exactly, exactly. So that's the end of our mini presentation. If you need more one-on-one coaching, reach out to us at Loft 30, ask us at loft32.ca, or you can go onto the Farmers Bridge website and reach us through that. That's loft32.ca/Farmers Bridge. Patti, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to hear more from you in the future.
Absolutely, my pleasure.